But those are our picks against the spreads. So now going on to the last segment, but not least, is John starts and sits for fantasy week. So I don't know if you can go ahead. This is your show. Who you got for
Yeah.
start/sit?
All right. Well, first off, we're going to start with the starts. And once again, I'm not going to name any of the very obvious choices. I'm not going to tell you Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey and like all these kind of guys. Your Derrick Henry. So I'm not going to tell you the guys that you should obviously be playing who are starters every week. These are more options who could potentially be streaming options if you're in need of that, or if you're in a tough lineup spot and one of these guys is involved, here you go. So for the starts at quarterback, first off, Daniel Jones. Once again, they're playing the Falcons. I don't have a lot of faith in the Falcons. I think that Daniel Jones' running ability, a running quarterback is so money for fantasy because you do get more points typically in most leagues when it comes to rushing touchdowns and rushing yards compared to passing. So I think that Daniel Jones is going to have some success here. Also, I think the Falcons have allowed like the most red zone touchdowns to wide receivers so far on the season. Mike Evans had a really good game against them last week. And so I think that this could be a good Kenny Golladay game. I think he had 3 red zone targets so far in the year, hasn't turned into anything, but I think this could be the week where he breaks through, gets a touchdown. So start Daniel Jones. The other starting quarterback, Mr. Justin Fields. And I know that, there's some differing opinions on rookie quarterbacks in their first start and if you should rely on them. Here's my thought process on this one. Andy Dalton for the Bears, average depth of target was 4.6 yards per target or per throw. That's dead last in the NFL. Justin Fields, 10.6 yards per throw. Very small sample size, but that's first in the entire NFL. So I think that Fields' ability to look deeper, his ability to create time, to allow plays to develop, I think that that's going to be able to just unlock the guys like Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney, like I said, especially against, like we both talked about, Brown secondary, who hasn't been super impressive so far. And as I talked about with Daniel Jones, a running quarterback is so nice to have in fantasy. I think if he can get a rushing touchdown, some rushing yards, then he's a safe pick for sure here. If you have, a really solid starter, obviously don't go out and, start Justin Fields over him. But if you're like me in our dynasty league and you got Baker Mayfield and Carson Wentz, I'm starting Justin Fields this week. So I think that Fields, he could have some success. Also, just some stats about the Browns so far in fantasy. They have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks through 2 weeks. And Pro Football Focus has graded their coverage units as the 25th overall in the NFL. It's only 2 weeks. It's a small sample size, but I do think that just shows that, like we mentioned earlier, their secondary has been a bit suspect. So Justin Fields, that's the second quarterback to start. To run through the running backs really quick, this one's pretty basic. Tyson Williams of the Ravens. I mean, he's looked good so far, especially when it comes to running through contact. I think that behind Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs, he is the 4th running back in the league in yards after contact. Or per attempt, at 3.7 yards per contact per attempt. And so I think that he could be a solid start this week. Also, I think he's had over 50% of the carries for the Ravens. So although Latavius Murray, Devonta Freeman, Le'Veon Bell are all there, Tyson Williams so far has been the workhorse for them. And they're playing the Detroit Lions. So we saw what Aaron Jones was able to do them last week. A lot of that was in the receiving game. But I expect the Ravens to have some success running here. And I don't think it's all just going to be Lamar. I think Tyson could be a solid starter. The other running back, Mr. Chris Carson from the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, he's one of the more reliable guys. Last week, he didn't have an amazing rushing output, but he got 2 goal line carries, converted both of them into touchdowns. And I think that's just always going to be the case for Seattle. His ability to get touchdowns on the goal line, I think he's always good for at least 1, typically in a game. And then also they play Minnesota, who's had a bit of a porous defensive line. Joe Mixon had a lot of success against them. Both Kyler Murray and Chase Edmonds had success against them. So I think that Chris Carson could be very involved this week too. So those are the running backs for the starts. For the wide receivers, I'm not going to go too long on this one. Like I talked about with Daniel Jones, I believe in the Giants' ability to score against the Falcons. Kenny Golladay, I'm saying start him this week. Cortland Sutton balled out last week. Jets defensive back unit, not very strong. We both believe in Zach Wilson, but I think he's going to have some turnover-worthy plays against, a Denver defense who's really strong. And so that's just going to give the ball back to, the offense, Teddy Bridgewater, Cortland Sutton. And I think that Cortland's going to have another strong one. And this is a little surprising, I think, for some people because he feels like a guy who should be on the consistent starters list, but it's A.J. Brown. And I'm putting him on here because I think that his fantasy outputs haven't been amazing so far. His owners are sort of panicking right now. Should they start him? I'm going to say, go ahead, start him right now. A.J. Brown, I think, leads the league in deep targets that have not converted into catches. I think that Ryan Tannehill is looking his way, but it hasn't worked out so far. He does have more targets than Julio Jones in this offense so far. But like we said, it's just not working as of right now. I think this could be a bounce back game for him. At tight end, it's Jared Cook from the Chargers. The Chiefs, they're good, but their defense isn't their strong point, right? And the worry here is that maybe Tyrann Mathieu is going to have to deal with him. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of Honey Badger versus Keenan Allen in the slot. I think that frees up Jared Cook to be more involved. He's looked really good so far through 2 weeks. And obviously Justin Herbert, he's been phenomenal. Even in the Cowboys game where he only had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, like we talked about earlier, there was about 80 yards of passing offense that were called back due to penalties. So he was nearing almost 400 yards in that game. Probably could have had a couple extra touchdowns if things went his way. So go with Jared Cook at tight end. I don't know if you have any thoughts about any of those starters.
I like the Daniel Jones ones. I tried to pick him up in one of my leagues, didn't get him. I'm having a roll with Sam Darnold. It's my 2 quarterback league. Obviously, Darnold's looking good right now.
Right.
Got Mac Jones at 2, but I'm considering. I'll see. I have Odell, and I had him in the IR spot, but now he's questionable.
Right.
And I'm kind of upset about that because I feel like he's not going to play. And I'm like, can you have him listed as out so I can put him back in the IR spot so I can pick up Teddy without dropping anybody? I like A.J. Brown. I will say in regards to A.J. Brown, as an owner of him last year, got off to a slow start, and he finally got going. So, yeah, I'm with you. Just it's unfortunate. Just you got to stay patient with him.
Right.
It's also a new system for a new OC, at least, for him. And obviously now he has to share a little bit of the targets with Julio Jones. So, I'm with you on those 2. I really don't have any issues with the other ones. Just those 2 I really wanted to emphasize, especially A.J. Brown. Like, just to be patient with him.
Right.
As someone who had him, I don't have him this year, but I had him last year. So
I don't know if you're watching the Panthers-Texans games right now, but Mr. Christian McCaffrey just ruled out for the game.
Yeah, I have him in one of my money leagues, so that sucks. But I did have the Panthers, like I mentioned, in my dynasty league and 2 of my other money leagues, so they're doing pretty solid so far. I was worried for a second about that Darnold fumble that was going to cost me, but luckily the Panthers fell back on top of it. So
yeah.
DJ Moore having a really good game already. He has 100 yards.
He's balling out.
And that was only in the first half at the time we're recording this. So, still, I mean, that's already all you can ask for. So hopefully he can keep going for me. Because I don't play him in any of the leagues. So keep going. Keep feeding him. I'm fine with it.
Yes, sir.
So
all right. Well, real quick, going to go into the sits. So once again, a lot of this is matchup based. Not going to go into the, crazy high guys that are obviously you should be starting every week. Not even going to touch most of those guys because even when they have bad matchups, you should start them. All right. So for quarterback, we're going to start with Baker Mayfield. He's been really efficient on offense, but he's just not throwing touchdowns. They tend to finish their drives with rushing touchdowns. He's completing a lot of passes, but it's not turning into major yardage. As someone who owns Baker Mayfield in one of my leagues, it's not converting into big time points. And so I'm just going to go ahead and say, sit him here in this week. Maybe just wait, see if he can get consistent fantasy production somewhere else. If you have him and you don't have anyone else, go see if you can snag Daniel Jones or Justin Fields, somebody like that, if they're somehow still on the waivers. Also, Joe Burrow for the Bengals. It's just tough. Once again, bad offensive line, Steelers defense, they can come after you. He does have the potential to have a really big game, but I just do expect him to be under siege a lot this game, and that could lead into some turnover opportunities for the Steelers just because of the pressure that they're able to get on him. So I'm going to say go ahead and sit Joe Burrow. At running back, this one might be a little bit concerning for people because a lot of people drafted him high, but I'm going to say sit Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He has not had the fantasy production that owners have been wanting so far. The Chiefs, they pass the ball a lot. Kelsey and Tyreek Hill are always going to be the top two options in that offense. And I don't know. I think that with the Chargers defense, although they did give up, a lot of production on the ground last week to Dallas, I don't think that Kansas City is going to want to do what Dallas did and run the ball a lot. I think they have the ability to pass. And like you said, at the same time, the Chargers have had success against Kansas City in, the recent years. And so I think that Brandon Staley and this defense, they're going to put an emphasis on trying to stop the run. Don't allow the Chiefs to get easy plays and then allow, their defensive safeties are going to have to step up because the Chargers do like to run that defensive scheme where they have two high safeties a lot of the times to start a play. And I don't think they're going to want to try and have to bring them down if the run game's killing them. So I think they're going to put an emphasis on stopping Clyde Edwards-Helaire and just try to live and die by keeping up with the Chiefs when it comes to the passing game. The next running back, Darrell Henderson for the Rams. They play Tampa. I mean, if your running back plays Tampa, it's just go ahead and probably sit him. Also, I think he's questionable for this week, so don't even risk it if he is playing through an injury because just they're that good. A wide receiver, first off, we're going to say Mr. Corey Davis from the Jets. They play Denver. They have a really good secondary, just a really good defense in general. And also, once again, Teddy Bridgewater, he is a game manager at the end of the day. So I do think that we could see the Broncos dominate time of possession in this game. And then also, I just don't have faith in the Jets offensive line to give Zach Wilson enough time to really turn Corey Davis into a potential deep threat. So sit Corey Davis this week. The next wide receiver, and this is someone who we did put on our waiver pickups, but if you did pick him up or you're an owner of him already like me, temper your expectations. That is Henry Ruggs for the Raiders. They're playing the Dolphins, and so like I mentioned, I don't expect any of their top corners to guard Darren Waller, and I think that means that Xavier Howard, based on his speed, is probably going to guard Ruggs. I don't expect I don't expect Derek Carr to be taking advantage of that matchup with the talent that Xavier Howard has and the ability to just feed Darren Waller throughout the game and have easy success. So I would bench Henry Ruggs this week, even if you picked him up on the waiver wire. Be patient with him. And then the final wide receiver, Marquez Callaway for the Saints, as someone who was a bit high on him in the preseason, someone who I thought you should pick up. We had him on the sell high list for a reason before the season started, and it was that this could potentially be what happens. He doesn't turn out to be the number one receiver on this offense. He doesn't really turn out to be much of anything. And I just think that this could be a week, especially against the Patriots, where they're going to want to rely on Alvin Kamara more after what we saw out of Jameis last week. So I'm going to say bench Marquez Callaway. He has not turned into anything so far. I think his best week, he had like 2 points. So wouldn't rely on him to bounce back, especially against Bill Belichick. At tight end, it's your guy, Robert Tonyan. A large part of this is the Fred Warner effect. I think that Fred Warner, he's just so good at linebacker, so good in coverage that he could be matching up with Tonyan throughout the night. And then they also have pretty decent safeties. And then once again, I do have concerns about their secondary's ability to stop a guy like Devontae Adams. And I think that Aaron Rodgers could be attacking those corners all night long. So I'm going to say sit Robert Tonyan this week. Could be a tough one with Mr. Fred Warner. That is the sits for this week. Any thoughts?
No, I mean, especially Tonyan. I mean, yeah. And then Marquez Callaway, to be honest, like if you're starting Marquez Callaway, just go find a different receiver on the waiver wire because there's better guys out there. But really, no qualms with what you have. Like I did mention, I was confident in Cincinnati winning, but yeah, I don't expect a pretty performance from Joe Burrow because,
right.
I mean, like we said, we saw Derek Carr last week. He only had like 2 touchdowns, 280 yards, some big plays too. But I just don't think Cincinnati's line is as good, and especially we saw last week Joe Burrow. It seems like week one's a little bit of aberration. I thought week one that he was fully back, the ACL injury was no issue. But we kind of saw last week, I think pressure kind of started getting to him.
Right.
started making some mistakes. And he's playing Pittsburgh, especially if TJ Watt's out there. Even if not, Pittsburgh always finds ways to force the issue. Blitz,
Right.
make decisions. So yeah, I'm all aboard. No issues here, man.
All right. Well, that's it for the fantasy starts and sits. Obviously, if anybody has any questions, this YouTube video will be going up before the games have started. So feel free to drop your line of questions in the comment section, and we'll try to respond as soon as we can.
Yep. Other than that, once again, thanks everyone for stopping by. If you did watch the live stream, shouts to Sadiq for commenting. But otherwise, whether you're listening, watching, wherever, just feel free to rate, comment, subscribe, and just do all that fun stuff. And then once again, I already should shout out our Instagram, but also our Twitter and TikTok is at Shut Up and Ball. Those are the handles there. And we have a Facebook page, Shut Up and Ball. Other than that, hopefully everyone enjoys their week 3, unless you're a Christian McCaffrey owner. Sorry, it sucks. I'm one of them. Hopefully the rest of your team balls out and can cover that loss for you. But it's a hamstring issue. Doesn't look too bad. He's walking on it. So maybe it's more of a precaution thing. So we'll see. But regardless, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your football.